right, hello everyone, and welcome to Theorycraft Thursday.
Okay.
This, of course, is Ursinity speaking, and Proud is the one interjecting randomly.
Yeah.
And this, of course, is everybody's favorite dancing podcast. Today we are bringing back a special move. We have started learning the point choreography for Laboom's song "Shooting Love." I'm very excited for it.
Shoot my love.
I know Proud is excited for it too. Big fan of rookie groups here. And so that's what we're going to be showing you today. So let's just get right to it, shall we? All right, and so hopefully you get the gist of it. You can put that in like, halftime, and that's how you'll learn it. That's the point choreo. So have fun, everybody. I'm glad we all learned something on this episode.
Like that one. I remember you've been working on that for a while, but like 3 weeks ago, I think, is when you did it on the show, and it wasn't that great. You're probably distracted by talking about some Dota things, but this time when you could really focus on the move, and it was pretty solid.
Yeah. I'm glad everybody appreciated it, and I hope to bring more in the coming weeks. So on that note, let's jump into our, addendum kind of extra topic, which is Dota 2. So let's discuss that, shall we? So, kind Mr. Proud, Fancy Feet Proud, as they call you at the dance studio.
That's honestly my only name at this point.
Yeah. How has your week in Dota been?
It's been pretty good. You idiot.
Good. Okay. Continue.
Okay, all right. Getting up there. The MMR we got to 49-42, but then we lost a couple. We won one back. So we're at about 49, roughly even, like a little bit under, like 2 or 3 under. So it's been fine. I've been trying to analyze like what actually I should be playing in these matches, and I'm kind of coming away with Drow Ranger. I should be playing a lot more Drow. I win my lone Druid games. If I ever have to play Offlane, I play Underlord, and it's a free win, but I'm not that much of an asshole, so I don't seek that out. Winter Wyvern against Meepo, shout out to you. That was hilarious.
Oh, yeah, it's the best.
The Meepo player was actually really good at dealing with it. Whenever he tried to kill me, he would only fight me with 3 Meepos, and then he would like leave 2 like circling me, like I'm gonna fucking kill you. It's like Jesus Christ. It was honestly really good. Like he was a fucking strong player. But anytime he tried to get someone else and he went with 5 Meepos, or if like one person could just fight their Meepos, I would just like fucking get this. They would die. It was great. I've had a lot of success against Meepo players just by like yelling at my team like pick Phantom Assassin, because like they obviously like Meepo players ban Sven every time. That's how you know there's a Meepo coming when you see Sven banned. And you're like, yo, that motherfucker's gonna pick Meepo. You gotta pick PA, because like PA is the second carry you want, because she can be KB and just burst one of them. So yeah, I've been playing a lot of Drow. I know I've hated this hero, but I'm feeling really strong about it right now. It's just a fucking good hero.
Yeah, I think Meepo, obviously, as a Winter Wyvern player, I'm never too concerned with Meepo picks, but Meepo is one of those heroes where PL also kind of has this dynamic, but I feel like enemy teams commonly like overcommit to countering the Meepo. Kind of like, I think you were in this game, I think it was one of our team games, but I remember a team ran a strat against us where they like first picked Meepo, but then they like last picked Ember Spirit. And our team, logically, we were thinking like, oh boy, we gotta like beat this Meepo spam.
No, they got Sven.
No, it was definitely okay. Well, maybe it was.
And I played Ember Spirit.
That's what it was. Okay.
Don't fucking debate me.
Either way, the whole idea was like we kind of were like, all right, we got to counter the Meepo player, and then they picked the last pick other core that was like, oh well, you need the complete opposite things for Sven that you need for Meepo. So that's why nowadays I'm kind of like, just pick whatever, and I'll pick Winter Wyvern, and we'll be fine. Yeah, and like that's all the Meepo counter you really need.
I agree, but your heroes already picked at that point.
Yeah,
and we were trying to think like, yo, could we Winter Wyvern carry?
Oh no, I'm pretty sure they first picked Meepo, but maybe this was a different time.
You may be thinking about a different game, because I specifically remember that one and being like, it's either Ember Spirit or Sven, and then they pick Sven, and we're like, God damn it! And then you're like, yo, can we get Wyvern? And I was like, I don't know, man, it looks hard.
Yeah, well, either way, I remember playing the Wyvern against it, and it was a good time. But also, I think we played against that Meepo spammer stack like 2 times in one night. Anyway,
Probably.
the other thing that you brought up was Underlord Offlane, and I played an Underlord Offlane game, and despite how amazing this hero is, I think I've found what I'm going to start doing against Underlords. And what happened to me was I offlaned against a duo lane that was Tinker and Ogre Magi, and they would just
Okay.
like run at me and burst me
Whatever.
down.
You were against a safe lane Tinker.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I like fed. It was terrible.
Yeah, didn't you just jungle after that? And you're
Yeah,
like, okay.
after, but like they like lulled me into a false sense of security where like I don't play a lot of offlane, so like I'm not that good. But
Yeah.
B, I was like, you know when you get to that point where you're like, you've died once or twice, but you see like the support in a different lane. You're like, all right, I can 1v1 the Tinker or whatever the safe lane is, and then like the Ogre Magi or whatever support is comes back to your lane, and then you just die again, and you're like, boy, I should have just done the smart thing and jungled, because that's what this patch is in the last patch, and Iron Talon, cool item. But yeah, but that was, I mean, that game we lost all 3 of our lanes, but still, it was one of those things where like I just like couldn't deal with it, and I was like, boy, I thought this hero was like such a lane dominator, but honestly against Ogre Magi, like he just man fight me, and like I couldn't get atrophy stacks because like I couldn't get near the creep wave, and it was just terrible.
Yeah,
So that's what I started doing.
sometimes I pick Treant against him because even through Atrophy Aura, I still hit harder than him.
That's true.
And like your Leech Seed like does incredibly, and like when you're trying to zone someone and you've got an ability like Leech Seed or Death Pulse or whatever, like that's always going to do very well for you. So I like Treant against him decently, but at the same time, Rain of Fire just shreds my fucking tree armor. So it's like, I don't know, kind of okay, kind of not, but whatever. I mean, if anything can do okay against Underlord, I view that as a win.
Yeah, I also, we discussed this a bit on the Wednesday show, but I was playing it like just a solo queue as my warm up game for today, and I just it was unranked, and like obviously I didn't know anybody, and I didn't even use my ultimate because it was just like I can't wrangle these bunch of random children together.
Yeah.
Like it was already a losing game, so like people were flaming and stuff, and like it was unranked too, so it wasn't like a huge deal, but it was just terrible. So
yeah, and the worst thing is that you want to use your ultimate, and then one of them is like, "No, we could have won that fight," and then another one is like, "Oh, why'd you cancel? Now I'm gonna die." It's like I hate all of you equally.
Yeah. Agreed. So I guess I'll hop into my weekend Dota. I know, like you said, we've both been at our highest points MMR wise. I think we've both been kind of hunkering down. I know, obviously, I listen to Proudland, and you guys are conspiring against me so that I'm not the first Hakuna Murana member to hit 5K. But we're in close contention for 5K first, I will say. Today, I could have gotten it.
You put me in check. I'll say that. You put me in check.
I got to 49.88 today, and I almost won the game. Like we were 1 racks up, we were doing really well, and then we just had like one throwy move, and then the enemy team had Morphling OD, and our cores were Invoker Clinks. And this game was like a 5,400 average game. Nobody wanted to mid. Not a single person wanted to pick mid. So I had to mid against some like 5,400 guy, and I actually wrecked. I did really well. It was mostly just because I got Sunstrikes on other lanes. So like my mediocre kind of losing like CS battle was mitigated by the fact that like I got first blood gold, then I killed another guy with the Sunstrike, then I killed another guy.
Dude, that shit is so crazy. You're like doing okay in your lane, and then like one of your other lanes fucks up, and then their Invoker gains like a level and a half, and you're like, fucking really? This is such shit. Oh god, this is so good. Yeah,
but after that, I mean, we're both Morphling players. You more so for sure. Like Morphling, he did the what is now common, where he just went like Lincoln's BOTE blade. He didn't stop off for Yasha or Manta or anything like that, and he just like came online, and then we reached a certain point, and we were like, this is not a game anymore. This is basically us getting kited and hoping that Clinks can rat. And it was just kind of a mess, but it was a fun game nonetheless. But
you see Morphling still building Dragonlance?
I see it some games when like they're doing a fighting, like if their team isn't winning, or if they can't turtle, he just does like he deviates to that and then fights.
Yeah.
But more often I see the casual Yasha, but it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't know. Morphling.
I had seen it some, but since the int nerf, the int gain went from 1.5 to 1.1, I feel like there's no room for like an item like that before Lincoln's. Like you need the int from Lincoln's. I go wand now instead, and like the 4 int plus the like active on it helps a lot. But I really loved the time when Dragonlance was with us, but I feel like it's just kind of gone now. But I was just curious if other people were still doing it.
I've seen it post nerf, but not as much.
Yeah, I mean I did.
But then again, like I
and
haven't.
then it was sad, and the next game I didn't, and it was much happier.
Yeah, I've had mixed results with it as well. So who knows? What
Probably
else?
someone.
I've been climbing quite a bit. Like I said, I hit 49.88 earlier. I've been playing Rubik all the time in ranked, and like if I had to first pick a support, it used to be Shadow Demon, but ever since the Shadow Poison nerf, I don't like to do that as much. I still pick him, obviously, if he's the right pick for the game, but he's not as safe as he used to be for just like I don't know the comp of either team. I'm just gonna pick him. So I've just been first picking Rubik, and I've been having a grand old time. I have, let's see, I think I won like 5 games in a row on Rubik between a few days, or 4 of them were ranked, so 4 ranked in a row. So that was successful. Other than that, we've had Hakuna Morana games, so I played a bunch of Cookie games, getting back to that.
Yep.
But that's mostly my week. It was mostly just focusing hard on climbing and then team practice, and I was busy with school stuff, so I had to take a couple days off, which I kind of suffered for, but it's been fun. I like having goals, and being so close to 5K is like, it's a real appreciable goal. And it reminds me of like, when I was first climbing to 4K and stuff like that. So it's fun. It's like very anxiety ridden, but it's fun. So regardless of whoever wins our race to 5K, it's a good time.
Yeah, and I was rooting for you. I wasn't hoping that you didn't get it or anything. It's all fun and games, but I'd be happy if you got 5K. Give some fucking legitimacy to what you say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm still higher than you, right? So there's still legitimacy to what I say.
I was too higher than you for a little bit. Anyway,
for a little bit.
But dude, I played a Shadow Demon game with Skrunk, and I went Armlet, and it was actually pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude.
I mean, it wasn't, but it was almost so good. Because there was a Ricky, and he was so good about, like, bursting with 2 attacks. That, like, he would always, like, get me close and then do, like, 1 attack and then immediately ulti. And then I'd be like, I can't toggle through that. And it was, like, just enough damage to kill me. So it's like, maybe I need to be, like, a higher armor support if I'm, like, using against physical moves. But it was definitely, like, they had to devote burst to me. Because the first fight where I used it, I just kept toggling, and they were like, why isn't their support dying? We've, like, slowly hit him with, like, Radiance Burn and shit, and he's still in this fucking fight. And I was just like, I don't know, I just have no health, and I have 450 health, I don't know. And it was just, like, it was awesome. But then they played around it, and it sucked. But it was so close to being fucking incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I Fafnir be damned, I still love it. And my Rubik, I build it mostly on Rubik. Because it's just, he's such a good support he only really needs 1 item, and then it's kind of like, you just have to get whatever. And a lot of times it's survivability. In some games, like it's like, oh, okay, they have magic damage, I'm going to build a Glimmer Cape, or, oh, they have only physical damage, I'm going to build Ghost Scepter. But in a lot of games, it's like, oh, well, one of their cores is a PA, and the other one is a Zeus. So if I buy Ghost Scepter, Zeus kills me, and if I buy Glimmer Cape, PA kills me. But if you have an Armlet, it doesn't matter, right? Like, you can deal with each situation independently.
If you have an Armlet and you steal Phantom Strike, you'll fuck them up.
That too. And it actually, I mean, you do get some additional damage and armor from it. The armor is actually significant. Like, 9 armor is a big deal.
That's like a plate mail. Yeah. That's a lot of armors.
Yeah, it's legit. I'm telling you. I don't want to get in more Twitter arguments about it.
Yeah, every time I see it, I'm just like, can you all just shut the fuck up? Like, honestly, what a stupid conversation. Like,
that's what Twitter's for.
It has its uses, and it's not objectively the best item or whatever, but like, there are definitely situations where it's cool. And also, you're arguing about armlet support. Fuck off.
I mean, but like you gotta I mean, like also it's just fun to like talk things through. But I'm a firm believer in certain situations, and I've always stipulated that it's a situational thing. It's not core on any support
if it's a
other
really
than
good
like
armlet
Kunkka.
game, it could be an item that makes your support fucking immortal. Because it almost did that for that game, but just the one thing was I didn't anticipate Ricky being able to just like attack ulti to get 2 attacks like instantly. That was like a creative thing that he started doing to just like be able to burst me through the armlet. But the fact is that Ricky had to use his ultimate to deal with my armlet, which is hilarious.
Yeah, well, like I just built it in a game today actually, and I built it like we only had like 5 minutes left in the game, unfortunately. But I was planning on building it regardless. But the enemy team had Spectre, and they had Tinker, Omni, and Tide. So what I would do is, if Spectre's going on me, that's like a mix of physical and pure damage, and so that was a hassle. And I would be able to armlets that she would take longer to kill me compared to the typical Spectre game where it's like, oh, I ulted, now you're just dead because you're playing a 900 HP support.
Oh, that was the other thing. We were against a Tinker, and he would just do that Ag's rocket spam,
Yep.
and I was just like sitting on the edge of a fight, and I would just toggle for every rocket, and I could and I was eating them. I was just fucking eating like 6 rockets that I was just like, that's no damage. That's also not doing damage. I'm fine. And it was like no other item could have helped me with that. It was hilarious.
It's dope. But yeah, anyway, we've talked about that enough. I'm sure enough people are like, we can stop talking about it. Also, they brought up on this week's Tuesday show, and I'm pretty sure Wazoo said, oh, Flub, I heard you have this whole support armlet thing. And I was like, this is my thing. This is not Flub's thing. Flub makes weird hero picks. He doesn't make weird item picks. Anyway.
For the most part, no.
I don't know. This is not the Flame Flub show. Flub's a wonderful, beautiful man.
Weird doesn't mean bad, unless it's you saying the word weird, then it normally does.
That's true. It does have that connotation with me. Anyway, let's hop into our segment this week. We've actually had a running theme of segments over the last month or so, and today, since we've already covered farming as support, mid, and carry, we are going to talk about farming as an offlaner this week.
Okay.
It was a good thing we had that little Underlord talk about how I just fed a bunch, and then the solution of feeding is you buy an Iron Talon. And I feel like this is going to be the shortest of any of the farming segments.
Oh my, is this really... Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's really the gist of it, right? Is in an offlane, you have to decide, all right, what hero am I playing? Does that hero necessitate farm? Can this hero farm jungle or ancients efficiently? Can this hero farm lane efficiently? And what are you laning against? Is it a tri-lane? Is it a dual lane? Is it a solo hero? Right? So those like 5 or 6 checks that like that checklist.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in that order, but maybe in that order. So that's really what goes into farming as an offlane, right? Unless I missed something, I don't think I did. Granted, I kind of covered everything.
No, I don't know.
I mean, nowadays, right, if you just go to like the list of offlaners that we see regularly, right, you have your offlaners that are able to fight people in lane, like supports that are trying to zone you, and then you have offlaners that cannot deal with supports that are trying to zone you. Nyx Assassin is probably a good example of the second dynamic, where with a lot of matchups of supports versus Nyx, he's going to lose out. Whereas a hero like Underlord is going to beat out many of the supports that are trying to zone him. Tidehunter's similar. Faceless Void also.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. So deciding and knowing from the get-go, can my hero fight against this tri-lane, right? If you're playing Underlord and the enemy team is like, whatever generic safe lane core, Ogre Magi, and like Lion, let's say, you should probably know, all right, I'm not going to be able to deal with this, so I'm going to have to go in Iron Town early, if not at the start, and I'm going to be stacking and pulling my things.
The most important thing is that you have to decide whether or not you can do this at level 1. Like, it doesn't matter if, like, oh, once I have Firefly and Napalm, I can fuck them up. Like, that's irrelevant, because you're not going to get that until you are able to fight them at level 1. So, like, you got to think with your initial setup, like, can I do this shit right now?
Absolutely, right? Because if you get zoned from level 1, it doesn't matter what your level 2 or your level 3 is, because you're going to be zoned from experience. So it's good to to not just run into lane thinking like, I don't know what's going to happen, right? Assess beforehand, and that's going to impact your starting items on a lot of heroes, some less so than others. But knowing whether like, oh, well, I need a salve, or, oh, I can just get away with a mango, stuff like that. Realizing what supports you're going to be against, noticing, oh, they have a jungle. If they have a jungle, then you can pick like an offlaner and farm more efficiently the actual lane compared to having to go back and farm jungle camps. And again, knowing like I'm playing Tidehunter, so as long as I'm like level 4 or 5, I can farm ancients, and if I'm level 2, I can farm my medium camp very easily, and even at level 1, you can farm it. So knowing your hero is half the battle, really, when it comes to farming as the offlaner, because unlike a lot of safe laners or mids, you have a lot. Your farming is impacted a lot more, I would say, by the dynamics of the game, and you have to change up your things. And obviously this is going to change if you're like running duo off lanes or anything like that, so we won't talk about that. But the focus that I have whenever I off lane and I'm deciding to farm, it's where is my team farming, and will I be taking things away from them if I go back to farm, like let's say the jungle. Right, so if you have a jungle Enigma and you're losing your lane super hard as the offlaner, and you're playing, let's say, Slardar, and you're thinking, all right, I could go back and farm the jungle to get my levels, and then once you're like level 3 or 4, then you might think, all right, now I'm strong enough, I have like Stout Shield, Iron Talon, and Brown Boots, I can go to lane, and the enemy has like roaming support, so I'm only going to be getting zoned by like a Rubik or something. Then you can deal with that. But that first like few minutes where you're still like level 1 or 2, you don't want to be taking away farm from a jungler. Or if you're playing an offlaner that really can't jungle, like Timbersaw, his jungle is incredibly slow. Terrible. Yeah. He can barely do it in the first place, but if you are even successfully doing it, you're doing it at a like snail's pace. So knowing these things and establishing these things is really half the battle. And then optimizing your build for farming in these hard pressured lanes. Like, I forget if we talked about this on the show, but I remember seeing Faceless Void in like high tier games like 6K, 7K games. When they had to go jungle, they would what they would do with their skill build is instead of maxing time walk like is commonly done, they would get 2 points time walk, and they would prioritize the bash over that because it just speeds up your jungle speed. And they just acknowledged, I
said that makes sense. Don't fucking.
Yeah, I'm glad it makes sense. I just need the affirmation of it making sense.
I figured. When we talk about the bash, bash scales up so much. Like any ability that gives you a % chance to happen. When something starts at like 10% and then goes to, starts at like 5 or 10% or whatever, and then goes up, like either 5% each time. Like each time you're compounding a percentage by just like another flat percentage, it gets more and more useful. Like taking PA's dodge from 0% to 10% gives you 10% more dodge. Taking her dodge from 40% to 50% is something like, I actually don't know exactly what that is, but it's
10% of 40.
No, it's 10% of 60 because you were dodging 40% of attacks, so you were taking 60% of attacks. But then if you take another 10% from that, it would be whatever. No, okay, so that's so it's 1/6 of that. So I don't know, man. Math
that makes sense. Let's see. I feel like Purge would know the math off the top of his head, but
it's almost 17% damage reduction going from 40% to 50% dodge. So like you can apply that to bashes if you go from like a 30% to a 40% bash. That's something like, I don't know, a 15% increase from having like the number is 10%, but your increase from the third point to the fourth point is actually like 15% more bashes. Like just crazy.
Yeah, and this is where we get into things like value points, where, the first one is, from 0% to 20% is a huge change, whereas the next point going from 20 to 28% is like a much smaller change. So that's an important thing to think about for sure. Let's see, what else about offlane farming?
Yeah, so there's the concept of like how you're going to mid-game farm as an offlaner that I always find pretty interesting, because you want to farm
I mean, the offlaners are pretty much always drafted outside of Lone Druid with the anticipation that they're going to be some sort of force in every fight that happens. So the fights that you do take, you need to be able to like rotate at all times. And because of that, like if you're going to be like low health jungling or anything like that, if you can't sustain or you're gonna take an ancient stack that's gonna wipe you out, like you want to avoid doing stuff like that, and you want to be farming like probably closer to the center of the map, or wherever action is most likely to take up. Normally center to the bottom, because like the Roche pit is it's kind of like a focal point of Dota games in general. So I'd say as an offlaner, generally, if you do have a choice over where your farm can be, being closer to the center of the map, and then maybe center, and then a little bit further down towards the Roche pit is kind of like your ideal area. But at the same time, you don't have a great deal of control over what farm your carries seed you and that sort of thing. And a lot of it is pretty hero dependent on how far you can like split push and get out of the way and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, really, as an offlaner, especially some of these more team fighty offlaners like Darkseer and Tidehunter come to mind. One of the largest aspects is balancing doing your job with farming, which can be more difficult than it sounds. And you have this with every role, of course, but offlane I find is particularly affected by this kind of dynamic within the role, because they are relied upon, especially team fighters, but even pick-off heroes like Batrider, or I don't know if you'd classify him as a pick-off hero, but
I would.
Yeah, well, because like normally you're picking off with your group
to initiate a team fight.
Initiator. But it's important to know, like, all right, I've done my job, or like, oh, I'm playing Tidehunter and Ravage is on cooldown, so there's no reason for me to stop farming and go deal with this push in bottom lane, because I'm not going to do anything, because Ravage has another 90 seconds cooldown, so, what the heck am I going to do defending bottom tier 1?
Yeah.
So, and then in that case, your team might rotate or whatever, but you can now go farm. So it's a balancing act, really, spinning a bunch of plates and whatnot, whichever awful metaphor you choose to use. What I find with offlane is one of the most important things, and a lot of these can be applied widely. Like, this knowledge can be applied to supporting against offlaners, especially. And that's pretty much all my offlane knowledge is derived from supporting against offlaners, because I don't play offlane. I very rarely play offlane, I should say. But with offlane, like, I find the first thing I do, and I kind of brought this up earlier, is always just to assess, all right, the enemy team, like, what do their supports do and what does their core do? So, for instance, if the enemy offlane, or if you're offlaning and the enemy safe lane is a safe lane that is like AM, Venomancer, Undying, you're not going to be able to go into that lane, right? Because you're going to get harassed by Venomancer. You're going to be getting stats stolen by the Undying. So AM's going to be pretty fine. But within this dynamic is that the Undying is almost certainly going to be rotating. And the Venomancer, the AM, and the Undying, even if all three of them are there, none of them have stuns, right? So you can offlane and be a little more greedy as long as you're carrying a TP scroll, because all right, between the three of these heroes, obviously pre-level 6 for AM, none of them are going to be able to stun me. They have no real burst damage, and I can just, if things go bad, I'll just TP and I'll be fine, whatever. So when it comes to this offlaning dynamic, you can be a little more greedy with your farming and with your getting XP against certain matchups, whereas, if the enemy's running, Sven, Lion, Rubik, you most certainly cannot do that. And that's kind of a larger topic that applies to all lanes, but especially offlane, I find that applicable too, because that can drastically change, a laning phase. Let's see, what else?
We can just kind of cap it all off with, like, make sure you always at least have the ability to get an Iron Talon if that's something that you may need. You don't have to start, Iron Talon Tango, but like when I play Underlord, I get Stout Shield, Ring of Protection, then 2 pieces of regen, and then from there it's not too hard to, muster up like 325 gold to get the Quelling Blade and the Recipe or whatever. So kind of, get yourself in a position, get a Quelling Blade early in the lane. You're going to need it to actually, make sure that their carry can't deny you that easily anyways. And then kind of your main thing as an offlaner, I mean, this is true for the offlane in general, but it does extend to getting farm as well as experience out of the offlane. But you kind of just want to make things happen. or throw off their supports, whether that be even if you do a single pull and like try to kill the hard camp and get either the supports to rotate to disrupt you, or maybe you just kill it real fast and then you get a double wave or something. You just want weird shit to happen in your lane that the supports aren't planning on. So as long as you're doing something, whether it be make them go on you, aggro the creep wave in like a weird way, if you're a hero that can creep skip, like or rather creep like pull their lane over to your tower and like make sure that the lanes don't meet each other, like any weird thing you can do is normally going to be to your advantage. Even if you just get a really good block, that's something that you can do. So as far as the laning phase goes as the offlaner, just try to disrupt whatever the supports are trying to get the lane to do, and you'll be pretty well off.
Especially with pulling, right? Knowing I'm playing Axe and I'm level 3, so they're playing their hard camp, it's stacked a couple times. I can just invade that. Or like Timbersaw is another great example. It's all right, well, I have level 2 reactive armor, so I don't care about their small camp stack. I'm just going to walk into it, and I'm going to kill all of it, and they're not going to be able to pull for 2 waves because I took their stack, and I got all this extra gold and farm. So it is a lot of like very hero-specific little things like that, and knowing... Like, you know, oh, I'm playing Lone Druid, and sure, you could just walk to lane, or you could do the optimal thing and, you know, run your barrel around and pull creeps through and et cetera, et cetera. So knowing these little tricks per hero is key to, you know, changing a generic, like, oh, you know, we just have to zone him dynamic into a, oh, well, we have to zone him, but we also have to worry because his bear's arcing around and like grabbing runes or doing all these wild things. And that's really the like most successful offlaners, or the most annoying kind of offlaner, and the most successful when they have the most success in getting farm and XP is just when they change the dynamic, as you said, and really cause an undue burden upon the supports and make, you know, if you make 2 supports stay in your lane, not only are you occupying 3 people, but you're making your mid laners' life easier. You're making your safe laners' life easier, etc. You're making your supports, you know, your supports can rotate freely, stuff like that. So farming as an offlaner is in many ways less about the gold, or not less about the gold, but more about farming XP and letting the gold kind of come to you and realizing your like windows of time, like, okay, they just ganked mid, they smoke ganked mid, all right, or mid laner died, whatever. But that means that I'm solo laning against an AM, and I can bully him, and I can get like 2 creep waves of XP. Like that is the key to farming as an offlaner, in my opinion.
Okay,
all right. So now that we talk about that, let's talk about our combo for this week. And our combo for this week is less rigid than other weeks, but the key point to the combo is Drow Ranger. And we've played Drow before, and Drow has suffered some recent nerfs that we discussed in 6.88E, but she's still a quite good hero, and I know Proud's been playing her a lot, as he talked about in his Week in Dota segment. So we are going to be playing Drow, and then my support is thus undetermined. We'll discuss, you know, once we're done talking about Drow, we'll give some options, but we're not going to lock ourselves into any support because Drow kind of works with a lot of different supports. Like I believe we ran Drow Venge before, and that's a classic combo, but there's also some less common combos that are still quite good, past the obvious thing of like, hey, we want to have a ranged hero with Drow to benefit. So that being said, let's talk about Drow first, because I know you're a big fan.
Yeah, I've been... Sorry. All right, here we go. All right, yeah, I've been playing a lot of Drow recently. Drow's historically a hero that I've played begrudgingly. I know, you know, I'm a carry player, and the team's like, yo, Drow strats, we got to play Drow strats. And I'm like, what if I just ban Drow, and then I don't have to learn how to play this piece of shit? Because she's fucking obnoxious to last hit with, and she sucks, and I hate her. But lately, I've been picking her because I know she's just good, and she's because, I mean, Drow is a hero that demands team coordination, and the last thing that you want in a pub is something that demands team coordination. However, Drow has been long enough, or has been around long enough that you don't really need to ask anything of anyone. It's like as much coordination as needing a mid hero requires at this point. Like, you pick a Drow, someone's going to be like, range hero, I understand now. Like, it's not too crazy. So Drow, I feel like, is totally possible to be picked in my pubs now. Maybe at some lower MMRs you'll pick Drow, and then someone will go like Pudge mid, and then that's not optimal. That's suboptimal. But But my games, it works out pretty well. As long as you got some ranged heroes, pretty much anything can work, and it does give everyone sort of a sense of urgency, even though I don't really think that's justified. But people tend to play a lot better as soon as they're picking around one of your own heroes, and they'll tend to listen to you more when they've picked around you. So I feel like Drow is just a really good hero for pubs in general.
Yeah, I know, like, especially early on in this patch, before, like, people really discovered and fleshed out the whole Drow strat thing, I was always wary because historically Drow is a very, like, timing-oriented hero where it's like, all right, we have picked Drow strat, we have Visage and Venge, and we have, Invoker, let's say. We just need to run down towers at, like, 20-minute mark right after she has, like, whatever stat items.
Yeah.
But nowadays... and I used to think like that early in this patch, especially. I'd be like, okay, they're running a Drow strat. Like, she can't late game because we're just going to jump on her because we have, whatever X support or not support, X core that jumps on people, Sven, PL, etc. Not PL, haha, what a garbage hero.
PA.
PA. But then after a while, right, you see those games, you're like, wow, okay, Drow is with 4 melee heroes. And it's 60 minutes, but it doesn't matter because she just hits like a truck and she's kiting you with gust and she's doing all these things. So
it's all Dragonlance, man. The fact that you can, because like the reason that Drow had such a strict timing before, I mean, there are various reasons, but one of the main ones is that she couldn't do anything without putting herself at risk. And so you needed to be far enough ahead that like she was still unkillable just through the sake of your advantage. But now that you have Dragonlance, it's so much easier to make your like high ground push a lot harder to deal with, or make your high ground push like, I don't know. You can't just go on the Drow immediately now because she's actually pretty far back when she's killing your towers these days.
Yeah, and I mean, she probably has a Manta. She's probably just sieging with illusions and all that garbage.
Dude, fuck Manta, man. I don't go that shit anymore.
Yeah, are you doing Silver Edge?
I do Silver Edge pretty often. Silver Edge, I think, was the most underrated item. I see a lot of people getting it now on almost every hero. Like, I see Juggernaut going, like Battle Fury, or Phase, Battle Fury, Manta, Abyssal Blade, Silver Edge. Like, that's the most common, like, progression of Juggernaut that I see. Sometimes you go Blink Dagger in a different place. But I see a lot of Silver Edge Juggernaut now. So I'm feeling pretty confident with my analysis that, like, Silver Edge on PA was awesome, but it's just good in general. And yeah, Silver Edge on Drow is sick. I mean, there's so many heroes that have passives to disable, and then plus it's just good stats. But I just go Hurricane Pike BKB at this point for the most part, and it's really strong. BKB is just such a core Drow item.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's always BKB is always the item that you don't want to buy until you really need it, and then you're like, "Well, I should have built this 5 minutes ago."
Yeah.
But
I don't know. There's so many, like, a 5-second BKB really isn't that bad, especially when it has a 55-second cooldown. Like, the main point of a BKB for the most part is to just invalidate that open series of bursts or make yourself not affected by like the opening volley of like AoE stuns and damage, right? So in theory, unless a fight, if a fight only lasts like 15 seconds, your initial BKB usage is basically all you need. If a fight goes to like 30 seconds, like maybe that 10 seconds was necessary. But as a ranged hero, all you need is the BKB. You get your positioning back after the first volley of spells, and then you can go from there. As like a Sven, you're kind of like, you need the BKB the whole time because you're always going to be in range of everything. But as a Drow, having the 5-second BKB really isn't that big a deal.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I'd never thought that way before.
I've been a huge fan of just getting like, I mean, I don't like early BKB on Sven, partly because of the reason I just said, but also just because like I want the crit. I want to be able to fucking like get in there and fucking kill someone immediately. I don't want to have to work for it. But as Drow, and other various heroes, I'm trying to think who else. Like PA, I'm pretty fine with the 5-second BKB as well, because I just like, I go in and I do my fucking Phantom Strike and I kill someone. If I have a BKB popped for 5 seconds, that's all I need to get my initial kill. If I have 10 seconds, that's great. But like, if I don't have the BKB, I'll just blink in and get Hex and it's done. So I'm pretty partial to just like getting the early BKB on those heroes as long as you can get the kill. And Drow, I think it's fantastic on.
Yeah, I like, one of the big things about Drow that I appreciate now is that she has a number of different builds that she can do. I know you were just talking about, doing Silver Edge builds and more of these like stat heavy. Obviously, there are core items like Dragonlance, Hurricane Pike nowadays, but the thing I like about Drow is just that, like, you can do different things. I think this is a very valuable dynamic with any core, especially in solo queue pubs as we talk about on Wednesday. So I won't go over that point too much. But do you do the Aghanim's Drow build? I know
I've never
you didn't
actually
like it much.
done it.
Yeah,
I've never done it. I think it's fine. I just in the games that I've played on Drow, like okay, so there's this game I played recently, and this is kind of tying into some other stuff. I was first pick Drow, I think, and then we had someone randomed a Weaver and decided they were offlane. So I was like, all right, only way this is gonna win is if I'm Drow and that Weaver has enough damage to actually be a decent offlaner. So I did that, and and the game was just going in a way that the Ags wasn't necessary, and the game was ending soon enough that basically whenever I play Drow, I just build whatever item I need then. I don't I'm going to buy an Ags and then a Maelstrom and then a second Maelstrom and then a Mjolnir. Like there's no, I get the fucking Dragonlance and then I get the Force Staff and then I get, because dude, the fucking, like whenever I see people go home with the Dominator on Drow these days, I'm just like, yo, don't build that. You don't need health regen, for fuck's sake. Just get the Force Staff, like the 3 health regen. That's all you need. You don't need lifesteal in a fight. Like if you're taking damage, you're not going to be dealing damage back. Like that's not how Drow works. Lifesteal is not a good thing for Drow fighting for the most part.
Yeah, I know Drow is one of the few heroes I want to say that I see with just a Morbid Mask, and that's it. Normally they build in something else. I've seen that.
It's okay, but I mean, normally you get that just for like sustain, and the Force Staff from Hurricane Pike gives it to you. And once you go to Hurricane Pike, it gives you 4 HP regen. Like Drow doesn't have that much health that she's losing, and that she needs to recover. Like 4 HP regen takes care of you, and you're normally partnered with like a Dazzle or an Oracle or something like that, or an Omni, which is way better. Holy shit, Drow Omni, that is unreal.
Yeah, maybe we'll play that. Any more thoughts on
ago?
Huh?
Play Omni, PA Omni.
We did do that, but that's one of the options because that's what we're saying for our support.
Drow Omni is so good. That's, man, whenever I have a fucking Omni, I'm just like, it's incredible. Oracle's really good too, though. I think Oracle and Omni are my favorites, but
yeah, and Drow Aura mitigates the Oracle nerf.
That's one of the things. Is like Oracle can still zone it by himself because of with Drow's Aura dealing with him. But yeah, like that game that I went where I was like 10-0-14. This is like what made me like, okay, like I'm actually a fucking strong Drow. Like we had an 0-5 Weaver, and then just because of my damage, eventually that evolved into a fucking 5-5 Weaver, and he just went like phase boot Magic Wand Solar Crest, and he would just Solar Crest me while I pushed, and then if like anyone ever did anything, he would like bug them and Solar Crest them, and I would fucking Hurricane Pike them and just like kill them immediately. It was super cool. Yeah. Oh, we had a Zeus mid. Fuck, man. Whenever I'm like, all right, we got to Drow, pick up ranged mid. He's like, oh, okay, Zeus. I'm like, that is not.
Yeah,
Zeus doesn't have an auto attack, you asshole. That didn't help. But yeah. Anyway, man. Drow is so fucking good. But yeah, I like my standard. I start with Wraithband, and then for the most part, I either do Wraithband or just the what is that item? The Circlet? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Circlet.
Yeah, not that. The Ring of Protection. I start with the Ring of Protection, upgrade it to a Bassi, and then I have 2 pieces of regen. But if I'm in a lane where I don't feel like I'll need that much regen, I just go for the Tango and Wraithband, and like the 9 damage and 6 of it being from Agi. It gives an extra 1 damage through my aura or whatever, and it's pretty solid. But then last time I got was a Desolator, which I thought was like super, super nice for just like, we need to break high ground. Nothing in my team fight damage isn't that relevant. I just want to like kill a tower super fast and force them to make a reaction quickly. And like, that's exactly what a Desolator did. It's like crit is cool. Crit provides you damage multiplication, like a really strong damage multiplier, but it doesn't affect towers at all. So I went with the Deso instead, and that was pretty solid.
Yeah, that makes sense. So any more? I guess we talk about Drow strats like whatever it was like a month ago. But I know you brought up Drow Weaver quickly. We ran this as a team the other day. I mean, we lost the game, but it had some clear
the Weaver was
potential.
Fine.
Yeah. I think we had larger issues that game than the comp. But Drow
So
Weaver's pretty cool.
The main idea is that Weaver's a shit offlaner, but everyone, like, whenever someone randoms Weaver, they're like, oh no, it's okay, I'll go offlane, and you're like, Jesus Christ, we fucking lost. So I picked this to try to start making that work. The initial inspiration I got for it was there's this dude who I see in my pubs all the time named Davai, Davai, and he
like
picks
go
Drow.
in.
Yeah, he picks Drow jungle every day, which is a weird thing to name yourself Devi and then be in the fucking jungle for 10 minutes.
That is
And
the
he
least
gets,
Devi thing ever.
yeah, he gets level 6 at like 8 minutes on a jungle Drow. Like, he wins fairly often, but also, like, whenever he's on my team, I'm like, yo, this is a jungle Drow player. Like, we gotta plan around this. So I always pick Weaver Offlane whenever I have him. Because, like, the only way we win this is if I'm a hero that's gonna have a shit ton of impact. Like, I need to take advantage of the fact that we have a Drow jungle.
Yeah.
And Weaver is one of the best heroes for that. So you have Weaver with like his double hits and his Sakuchi, and he's really hard to deal with. But if you add in that he's hitting for like 70 damage at level 2 twice, like that's incredible. That will fuck someone up. So I think Weaver is one of the heroes that, or at least early on, takes the best advantage of Drow's aura. So that's why I was kind of going with him. And a really overbuffed Weaver can actually work as a pretty decent offlaner. And if a lot of his damage is coming from Drow, he's not that crippled by if you go first item Lincoln Sphere or something like that. You can go a defensive item first and still have enough damage to like actually be a threat. And then also your bugs, the minus armor helps out your entire team as opposed to normally you have Weaver in the safe lane and the bugs really only affects him because your mid is like, I don't know, a fucking like when Weaver is popular, I don't know who the mids were, like a Queen of Pain or something like that.
Yeah.
So I like it a lot with the Drow strat, honestly. But you do need to find, in a competitive setting, I feel like it needs to be a duel or you need to have a support that can come help because Weaver can't jungle, which we were just talking about as an offlaner. Jungling is very core.
Yeah.
Weaver has no business with an Iron Talon. Or you need to make sure that you're against a dual lane or a weak lane that doesn't have a great answer for a Weaver.
Yeah. I know we tried Weaver Abaddon, which you were saying is kind of like a more classic lane, but we didn't have great success with it.
No.
I could easily see like I don't know about this as a duo lane, but I think Treant has interesting potential
Treant I
with
like
Weaver.
too. Yeah.
I don't know if you'd run necessarily Treant Weaver in the off lane, but I like that synergy nonetheless. Like you're in Weaver in the safe lane support, maybe. And then I think you could also easily run like Weaver Omni or I'm not sure. Other things.
I liked the idea if we did like Weaver Jakiro and then have.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, you could do Weaver Jakiro and then have like a Treant Drow safe lane and then have the Treant help out the dual off lane. That might actually be really strong.
That sounds legit.
I just would worry that it's not a strong enough support to keep the Drow alive. But if you have Drow like Jakiro does some nice zoning and you have Drow Weaver, Weaver does some decent zoning and like Weaver's enough of his own threat that maybe he can take some of the burden off the Drow needing to be protected so much. Yeah, there's things you could do with that. I think that could be cool.
Yeah, really the key that I always think about with Drow is she can either make bad range laners, that's a stipulation, it's only applies to range. She can either make weak laners mediocre or mediocre laners into real lane dominators with her aura. Yeah, like Storm Spirit's a great example, right? All his laning nerfs were to his burst through his remnant. But you can mitigate that by making him actually like right click for a lot of damage. Same thing with Invoker. Yeah. Invoker, if you're playing Wex, you can equal out with the opposing laner in earlier levels, and at an Exort, like you go from being a strong laner with a lot of damage to having a humongous amount of damage in a very early phase. Also, the real big reason I love having Invoker with Drow, which is always my mid pick. If I have a Drow on my team and I'm playing mid, it's always Invoker. Is her aura applies to Forge Spirits when she clicks it in.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. It's absurd. It's an absurd amount of damage. It is unfair. Same thing with the Eidolons, Enigma. It's like weird to work Enigma into this kind of comp, but Enigma with Drow aura.
That was the popular thing to do for a while. It was like Visage was kind of phasing out, and people were like, "Well, Enigma's just as good as far as like little minions to do damage."
Yeah, but so you have a lot of little options. And there's a lot of room for ingenuity with comps with Drow because there's a lot of like fun interactions. You could play like you could pick 4 heroes that all build HOD. You could dominate ranged creeps, and then
dominate catapults. Catapults too, which I like. I hadn't I knew if you asked me, I would have said that's true, but it wasn't until I actually used it with one catapult next to me, and I was like, holy shit, this catapult is like chunking the fucking tower. That's it.
Yeah, it's something else. So that's about all I have to say on Drow. You go finish your point.
I played a Lone Druid game where I built
Divine Rapier, and it was hilarious. Okay, you can go.
That's fun. I played a Juggernaut game, and I built a Battle Fury. Not my first item, but I built a Battle Fury.
Yeah,
And
Battle Fury
that's
Jug
my, like...
has been not working for me lately.
I went Vanguard Battle Fury. This is a complete tangent.
Oh,
I'm amazed
Vanguard
I...
first?
Yeah, I was dominating. I was playing against a Nyx, and I had a Bane that was like supporting my lane, but mostly was roaming. So I was basically free farming. Or I mean, I was free farming. I had like 99. I think I had 93 CS at like 11 minutes or something.
Okay, if you said 10, I was like, do you want to take over my carry position? Because that's crazy.
No. I think it was like 12 minutes or 11 minutes or something. But like
Yeah,
I was...
that's good.
Yeah, and they had an enemy Tiny. They went like a really all-in thing, and he got a Blink Dagger, and like because he was also free farming, and they like repeatedly chain killed the Darkseer, and I was like, man, I could just rush a Battle Fury because I'm like to super accelerate my farm.
Yeah.
But then I was like, he got a Blink Dagger. I bought Perseverance, walked like 10 feet, and then I was like, this is a bad idea. Walked back, had like 2 seconds left on the sell back for full gold timer.
Just
sold
it.
No. I sold it so that I could just instant buy the Vanguard.
Okay. I guess it's you got it 875 gold faster. But I was gonna say like you didn't have. It's not that important. You just disassemble it and use the ring. Of Hell.
Well, that's what I would have done otherwise.
Yeah.
But then like within 30 seconds, Tiny blinked in my lane, tried to kill me, and I got away with like 100 health. And I was like, this is the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I freaking hate that hero. But he's just so good. And like in my game that I could have broken 5K with that I played Invoker in, I was just thinking as we were discussing that I should have just played Jug, and I think I would have done much better, like in the overall scope of the game. But that's neither here nor there. He's pretty good. Well, because Jug versus OD is like a weird matchup, but I think that's the matchup was fine with Invoker, but scaling wise against a Morphling carry, like as fine as Invoker is, he can't just man fight a Morphling, and I was just getting bursted down.
Neither can Jug. Like that's not a good matchup for Jug either. Like you can't Omni Slash him. You can't Omni Slash OD. I don't know.
That's true. You can't Omni Slash OD.
Yeah, he can just W himself. Morph can waveform out of it. Like that wouldn't have been any better.
Yeah,
and
I guess so.
OD would fuck you, man. Like you have to go up to a creep to last hit it. Good luck, dude. You're imprisoned every time.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. I'm trying to think of any way to mitigate this. Because like I would love to have a diffusal. I was gonna play Quas Wex Invoker, but I was like, yeah, but we have a freaking Clinks on our team as our carry and nothing else. We had a Darkseer offlane.
No,
anyway,
I think Invoker was the best hero there. You just lost.
Yeah, I mean, I did fine. We frick Faceless Void was worthless. Yeah, we had a Faceless Void, not a Darkseer, but God, that was anyway. The next few weeks of the show potentially are going to be filled with me complaining because when you're at those break points, that's like the most stressful time. God, and I get okay, all right. So to continue with our Drow talk quickly, I will just list off a few supports that I'm thinking about playing in this.
We already talked Weaver.
Yeah, we already talked about Weaver in the offlane potentially, and as supports to pair with the Drow. We talk about Omni Knight. Omni Knight's a good one just to buff up the Drow, of course, and you could just siege with like in perpetuity if that's the proper
word. Then I
don't
have to rush my BKB immediately.
Yeah, that too. The other one that we were talking about is Oracle. Again, defensive support to support the Drow, but also has some offensive potential in the early to mid game, which is nice. And her aura is going to mitigate his nerfs, which is great. I also really like playing Dazzle with Drow. It's another one we brought up earlier. Yeah. And so really the running theme with these is you're playing defensive supports, oftentimes ranged supports, and what you want to do is secure the pushes, right? You're running these kind of pushing supports that are going to just have this endless mass of, Drow chipping away at your tower, compared to some supports and cores that are more like all in on one tower. Drow is more about like constant pressure. On that note,
the difference between like a Drow is a very different push than a DP. A DP is you do it and you need to get in there. A Drow is just like, hey buddy, your tower's gonna die whether you like it or not. Like slowly, you got to do something now. And a support that can punish them for going in half cocked is really good support.
Yeah, I also like Ogre with Drow just because he provides like a beefy front line and he can just slow somebody paired with Drow or Drow arrows. That's nice. But
giving her the move speed is kind of like it's a way to help her out, kind of defensively.
And the other thing, like we talked about Drow Aura making lane like mediocre laners into great laners. She also does that with supports that are weak at zoning. Once she's like level 3 or 5 and has Aura more leveled and more stats naturally, she can really make some of the supports that suffer at zoning without abilities into solid zoners without using abilities. So a hero like Lena even is a good example where her damage isn't great, but when you have an extra, 4 damage at level 1, an extra 7 at level 3, 10, etc., she becomes a real threat as a zoning hero. Oracle, again, like we just discussed. So you've got a lot of options with range supports. So that's kind of...
I mean, Drow herself even can solo zone most people. Once she gets 2 points in frost arrows, as soon as she gets on someone, they're going to lose half their health before they get back to tower. So even a hero like Ogre Magi, she can help. Although her aura doesn't buff Ogre Magi, the fact that it's so easy with her 600 range to just go over and drop a couple frost arrows helps him zone better.
And the constant advantage of having it be a toggleable orb effect that won't pull aggro from creeps.
Yeah.
Kind of like Silencer Glaives. That's one of the big reasons why Silencer's so good at zoning, is you can stand in the middle of the creep wave, and if you're right-clicking, all the creeps would aggro to you naturally. But if you are standing there and using glaives or using frost arrows, that doesn't matter. You can just shoot them with, again, in perpetuity, and you'll be fine. I really hope I'm using that word correctly. I'm pretty sure I am. But anyway...
Do you mean impunity?
Impunity makes sense also. Define imperpetuity.
I've never heard in perpetuity.
Well, imperpetuity is the opposite of perpetuity. I'm definitely... God, I don't know. Anyway, this is less... this is not terribly relevant.
Perpetuity, a thing that lasts forever.
Yeah, in perpetuity. Yeah, forever. So that makes sense.
No, in perpetuity would mean doesn't last forever.
No, in space perpetuity.
Okay.
Yeah, not in perpetuity. Anyway, this is incredibly irrelevant.
Does it need to be in? Can't you just do it with perpetuity?
Yeah, I've heard people say for. Have I heard people say for perpetuity? I'm pretty sure I've always heard it in perpetuity. And this is incredibly irrelevant. Let's hop into the game. You can watch the game on YouTube, youtube.com/.ptv1. We will probably be talking about our complete misunderstanding of the complexities of the English language on that, I'm sure, just like we talk about on the show. So you watch those. It'll be fun. Both our point of views should be put up, barring any weird issues. I know I've had some weird FPS issues with the new drivers update or something, but those will be up, and you can watch both of that, and we'll be back.
Okay.
We'll be back soon, friends.
We'll be back.
All right, hello, Run. We are back. We have just completed our game, quite literally just. It was 2 minutes ago.
I don't care.
We are in our game state of discussion. I'm absent-minded because this game was so stressful and I need to eat. But I guess just to begin, I'll do what we always do and list off the teams. So the enemy team had a safe lane Spectre, a mid Phantom Assassin, a support Oracle, and an aggro duo, which was Tusk Witch Doctor. Fun fact, the Witch Doctor, for any of you guys that fiend Reddit, Witch Doctor in this game was the guy that only plays Witch Doctor. There was a big Reddit thread about him. He weirdly enough, he's only 4,000 MMR, but he only plays Witch Doctor somehow.
Yeah. I mean, Witch Doctor sucks right now. He's a really fucking bad hero. So
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he's really bad, but he's definitely not top tier. But
I think he's really bad. I'm gonna say he's one of the worst supports. I can't think of many supports I would say are worse than him.
That's
kind
fair.
of, but Visage has his place. And
that's
skill
the
cap
thing.
make Visage good.
That's the thing. Witch Doctor doesn't really have a place. He just does generic things, but a little differently.
He's good against offlane Beastmaster. That's about it.
Yeah, well, it's you pick him because you're oh, let's push. We know Witch Doctor, but it's but we'd rather have a Dazzle or an Omni Knight or anything else. So anyway, but that was interesting. And the thing I was getting at is now in the day and age, most of his games were ranked, if not all of them. And how do you not get it banned against you all the time? Even if it is Witch Doctor, people are still just going to auto ban. But the guy had 50 or 60 games before I found a Lion game. So anyway, and our team was a safe lane duo lane, Drow Dazzle. The Dazzle was a pub. I played mid Invoker because this game, A, nobody took mid, but B, we queued way down. I checked after the game, it was 3 solo people and us, and then 3 solo people, and then a duo for the enemy team. And we had a quote-unquote roaming Ricky and an Offlane Abaddon. And I guess it's not really a spoiler, but we did lose this game. And I will... we haven't done it in a while, and it's not productive to just say, like, wow, our pubs were just awful. But I think we can both mutually agree, and anybody that watches the VOD can agree, especially if you watch the VODs from Proud's perspective, that these pubs did nothing productive this entire game. I don't think like anything good happened.
Well, productively, I'll talk about like what should have happened. Okay, so if you're against an aggro duel of Tusk Witch Doctor, and you have the capability to have 3 heroes go against it, that's what you do. Whenever you're against an aggro duo, the reason that they are an aggro duo is because they think that they can that their two heroes are stronger than what you'll have in the safe lane. The counter to that is not to give them an easy safe lane. The counter to that is to have 3 heroes there, because pretty much at any given point in the game, 3 heroes are almost always going to be stronger than 2, unless, they can just take one out immediately, in which case then their burst is going to be gone for the most, unless it's like a 6-slotted fucking PA at 5 minutes. Like, for the most part, 3 heroes greater than sign 2 heroes. And that's generally how Dota 2 works. So if you're ever against an aggro duo lane, ever, tri-lane it. That's all you gotta do. That's the easiest thing in Dota. I see people fuck it up all the time because they're so fucking stupid. But if you're against an aggro duo, tri-lane it. That fucking simple.
It's simple math at the end of the day. Yeah, and then on top of that, I think another valuable lesson is if you're going to be playing a hero and say, I'm going to roaming Ricky does not mean I'm going to sit in a lane with no kill potential.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And like, if you are playing, excuse me, any roaming hero, whether it's roaming Ricky or roaming Kunkka, roaming Earthspear, whatever, you need to, roam to places where A, you can get kills, or B, your teammates are being killed or being threatened, right? Because if you're roaming Ricky and you're sitting in the off lane with an Abaddon, Ricky Abaddon is not a kill lane. I don't think, I'm sure dozens of 1,000 MMR players could tell us that Ricky Abaddon is not a kill lane, right? Like, that is very simple, hero dynamics, and especially not against Spectre Oracle.
Yeah,
and so
very little is a kill lane. I mean, if you have like a stun, I mean, you can definitely like win that lane, but you're not gonna, you're not gonna like burst down. Maybe you could burst down an Oracle, but not with those 2 heroes.
Abaddon is not conducive to any form of kill lane, right? He can be aggressive, but he's not like a kill lane hero. He's a like, let's hassle people and force them to deal with me and get like CS hero.
Yeah,
and
he can dominate a lane, but doesn't have the lockdown that is needed to actually kill someone unless they're really far from tower.
Also, our team just in general does not have a lockdown. I, of course, on Invoker had a lot of lockdown, but I'm one hero.
I mean, kind of. You don't have like nothing you could do could stop PA from blinking away.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I can temporarily do that.
How?
But Cold Snap does quite a bit, and if she's ranged from people, it keeps her at range. I know what you're saying, though. It's not like
she can blink out of a Cold Snap. That's not like, you need to have. Like, no, I don't even think Cold Snap can trigger that often to stop her from blinking away.
Yeah, I think her cast point is fast enough that it's
almost every time. Yeah.
Regardless, I mean, you're right, but I'm the best lockdown we have, right? So you got to deal with what you got.
You're not wrong, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, Invoker's not heavy lockdown for sure, but he is something. Anyway, but yeah, so when you have 2 supports, you always want to have one that has some form of stun or hex or other like reliable CC, not Smoke Cloud and Dazzle Slow.
Yeah. Or if you don't have that, you need an offlane that's either Slardar or Axe someone with a relatively spammable like disable that can stop someone from activating a BKB.
Yeah. So we had some core issues from the get-go comp-wise, but then not only was the comp less than ideal, but the way that our pubs dealt with it, or pubs actually played in the game, compounded that issue, since we didn't just try against the aggro duo. And the quote-unquote roaming Ricky never stepped into mid at once. So I don't know what he was really doing. Honestly, I'd have to like rewatch the replay. But let's, that's us complaining about our teammates and
Also,
explaining.
if you're dealing with like a Tusk dabbing you under tower, maybe if you're playing Dazzle, like skills Shallow Grave before level 4. I don't know, just a thought. I want to throw that one out there.
Yeah.
Shallow Grave's a good skill.
Yeah, so as you guys can hear and see if you watch the VODs, we had some problems, but once we got into the actual game, we had like periods where things were going fine. I think like obviously our push comp, our comp, though not specifically a push comp, with the like selection of heroes we had, pushed very well during certain instances of the game. So that's when we kind of did take minor, I wouldn't say leads, but we took some ground back. But the real core issue became the fact that we didn't have any hardcore lockdown. So when these fights were going on, like things were just happening on a variety of different people, and we couldn't assess each one, right? So like I could deal with one problem, but then we could not deal with the other problem. And so when you have multiple cores in the enemy team and the Tusk got super fed, so you had a Tusk that you had to deal with, you had a PA you had to deal with, and a Spectre you had to deal with. And Oracle you need to burst down immediately, otherwise she's going to ult somebody, and that's going to be like ruinous.
Yeah.
So we just had a lot of issues. Excuse me. A lot of issues and not enough tools to deal with them because we lost our laning phase. And even though we took back some ground in the mid game, it was less than ideal.
Losing early game with Spectre PA lineup is not ideal.
Yes, that's for sure. So I had a decent time in mid lane. I had a few Sunstrikes because you guys were fighting so much up top that were available to be made. Unfortunately, like we were talking about in the VOD, despite having like hundreds of Invoker games, I have not played mid. Granted, like this was like a 4,300 average game or whatever, so I wasn't too concerned. But I'm not super comfortable on my mid heroes, despite like my history of playing them. So there was a little adjusting.
The mid mechanics on like competing with the last hits and that sort of thing.
Though, again, as we talked about earlier in the show, the fact that I was rusted on mid didn't matter that much because I had Drow Aura to compensate for like me miscalculating last hits every once in a while. Granted, I started overestimating my damage because of Drow Aura at certain points.
Yeah.
But regardless, it still helped me a lot in lane. PA mid is still incredibly annoying, it turns out. Despite the nerfs, it was pretty fine.
The nerf is only for roaming PA. It doesn't affect mid PA almost at all.
Well, yeah, almost at all. I mean, like, it was nice to have, like, extra wand charges at low levels, but you're definitely right. Like, the nerf was noticeable, but not, like, noticeable in a significant fashion, just noticeable in, like, hey, this is convenient.
It's like a 0.1% win rate shift maybe for, mid and safe lane, but it does matter for support, which is gone now.
But... yeah, so it was just annoying because, like, right when she hit, so I was playing Exor Invoker, and Exor Invoker hits that power peak, or not peak, let's say, but he hits a significant jump in power at level 8 when you have double forged spirits. PA, though, hits her point at level 6, where she was daggering me, and now she's getting crits every once in a while. And getting crit for, like, 300 damage with a dagger means that I have to keep on Quas for a while. If I have to keep on Quas, then this is what you were talking about on last Friday's show about mid matchups. If I have to keep on Quas, now I can't outlast hit her, and then it just makes my laning miserable, and then like Oracle rotates on you, and you just get screwed. That being said, the game wasn't terrible for me, but I definitely suffered once the Tusk was super online, because I would just get bursted. Like, Spectre would ult, she had a Radiance, had a decent timing, and Tusk would jump me every fight, and it was just like, it's like we talked about earlier. Like, there are too many cores to deal with at any given time.
Yeah.
But yeah, regarding the combo, and like you can start talking about Drow momentarily, but regarding the combo, especially with Invoker, I think I said this in the VOD or in this show. Invoker is by far my favorite mid to play when I have a Drow on my team. Obviously, Drow benefits many mids, but she benefits Invoker so much and leads him to have so much lane dominance that I was very happy to be playing this matchup. It just, obviously, the game kind of crumbled around us, but I think the synergy between Drow and Invoker, it undeniably helped a lot, and I'm sure I got multiple kills that I would not have gotten otherwise if you were playing like a Sven or something. So that was nice. But at the end of the game, at the end of the day, two people doth not maketh a team.
That's true.
Okay, Drow Ranger, how you feeling?
I still like her a lot. I think playing her first game of the day is maybe like I definitely needed some time to warm up because my last hits were super super rough. And then the lane was also obviously shit. Like you need to be able to coordinate with your defensive support. I think. Well, I don't even know that. This guy was just really fucking bad, man. Like he first pointed poison touch, and then level 3 didn't get grave. He just got a second point in a shadow wave. I'm like, dude. Like I'm dying under tower with Tusk like a hit away from death. Like my first 2 deaths, like Tusk died right after he killed me. He's like, get grave, man. It's pretty fucking simple. And then he would just like walk to the side shop when the lane was under tower, and then like, oh, hey, go figure, they were behind the creep wave, and then they killed you. And it was just like, all right, they have like 3 kills on you and 1 on me now, and it's just. That game was rough, man. But Drow was fine. Even late game, I could kill Spectre. I didn't have my Silver Edge yet, which I was going because I was against Spectre and PA, which is awesome Silver Edge candidates. So I was going Silver Edge, but I didn't quite kill them. But we didn't quite get there. But I mean, I killed Spectre like 3 times that game. I was just looking at you can see how many times you've killed various people and shit. My silence was incredibly useful. It was kind of unfortunate that. The issue I noticed for the most part that game was like a lot of our CC or ability to deal with people was like your tornado and my gust, but those don't work together at all against Tusk. If he snowballs, like
go Sorry,
on.
I want to interrupt you because I'm going to forget about it. One very nice piece of synergy between Drow and Invoker is if I have a meteor out, Gust will act just like Deafening Blast and add additional ticks. That's a big boost in the output of damage if obviously used like in synergy, which is incredibly hard to work together.
Gust is honestly like the best spell. Like my Gust usage is so fucking good. Like that's why I get the Force Staff so early because I can just position for amazing Gust, and it's like, oh god, it's so fucking good. But yeah, it would just be like, I don't know. I would want to get Tusk, and then he would be tornadoed, and I'd try to gust him, but like Snowball has no cast point to start it off, so it would be impossible, and they would BKB, and we had nothing that could deal with BKB, so I would just like force staff myself away, and then watch other people die to the fucking like PAs and that sort of thing. It was just like, and we built a Glimmer Cape when we already had a Ricky. Like none of our shit made any fucking sense at all.
Yeah.
The BKB I got was like relatively useful. It was nice that I, stopped getting Gradient's Burn and Spectre wasn't shredding me. And it allowed me to survive, like Tusk could snowball on me and I would just like BKB and then like Shadow Blade away and stuff like that. But maybe it wasn't entirely necessary, but I don't know. It's so hard to deal with a Spectre without a BKB.
Yeah, I think with my itemization too, it was like I did what I thought was best, but now in retrospect, I think I could have changed it. So itemization was something. I don't want to interrupt you on your Drought tangent. So.
Maybe I could have gotten the Silver Edge before the BKB because I mean Silver Edge is so like needed against both PA and Spectre, but then we would have a Glimmer Cape and a Ricky and me with a Shadow Blade. The main reason that I wanted. Yeah, and Invoker, and and the main reason that I wanted one of the reasons that I wanted to get it a little bit later was I wanted to hit that point where heroes didn't have room for dust anymore, which I did hit. Yep. I survived several ganks, I think probably about 3 because of the Shadow Blade, but then eventually we got out of dust and sentry time and into gem time when they were breaking our base, and then that was like, all right, that's taken care of. But overall, I mean, it's like as long as the hero, like if Spectre haunts in on me, Spectre can't kill me. He did that before, or she did that before, and I was like, all right, like, I'll just Shadow Blade. Your Tusk is in the fucking backlines, man. Like, you can't do anything. And she was just like, fuck. So go to one of these other illusions. So that was cool. But, I don't know. I feel like I did fine. My early last hitting was super shit, but I haven't played today yet, so I'm going to chalk that one up to that. But, I mean, the hero's good. Like, I started out 1-7 or something like that, and I ended, it was like 13-10 before I decided to kill myself twice in base defenses. But, I was, I put out a bunch of damage once, I was actually, like, fighting, and I killed their fucking Spectre, like, several times, so whatever.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just go over my itemization pretty quickly. Generally, I do the kind of what has become tried and true build for Expert Invokers, where you go Aquila, Brown Boots, Drums, Midas, Ags, and then you upgrade your boots into BOTs, and then you go Orchid, and then you go Octarine Core. What I ended up, and not necessarily in that order, of course, sometimes you'll be able to get the Midas. Like a lot of times, ideally, what I'll do is I'll get like Aquila Brown Boots Midas with like a magic wand in a case like this, or a magic stick at least. In this game, though, what I wanted to do, because I knew I was going to have the magic stick, what I did was I went, and I knew that you were going to have an Aquila, and I knew that we'd probably have a Vlad's from the Abaddon, although he didn't build it until I asked him to. But, you know, regardless, what I ended up doing was I did Null, 2 Fairy Fires, because since Null is cheaper than Wraithband, you can go Null, double Fairy, compared to Wraithband, 1 Branch, 1 Fairy, and then 2 Pooled Tangos. And that adds to just your dynamic of doing way more damage than the opposing laner. So that was pretty nice. And then I built my... and then I bought a stick, boots, finished drums, because we're just fighting constantly, and there's no way I was going to hold on to money for a Midas. So I was like, all right, I got to make the best of the situation. And I had all the stats since your aura paired with my hero to be fighting. So I just went drums. And then even though I got the Midas at 14 minutes, it's still, you know, it paid for itself within, what is it, like 13 minutes or something?
17, but I mean, 17. If you sell it back, it pays for itself very early. Sorry, meaning bread.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But it worked out. It was fine. That, you know, Midas on Invoker is mostly about the XP. Yeah, it's always good. Like, you get it at 20 minutes, and you'd be fine. Kind of like Quas Wex Invoker. What you do is you do, like, Null, Phase Boots, Earn Midas, and you're going to get the Midas late, kind of like in this, like, 14-minute range. But it's more about the fact that you have it than it is about, compared to some other heroes that are getting it to propel their farm. It's more about the XP and all that. So that was fine. And then I had my Ags at 23 minutes, which is slow. Ideally, I like to have my core of items in a good game around like 16 to 18 minutes. But it was like passable. But fights just didn't go our way perfectly. And when and when you have only like level 1 or even level 2 invoke, and with Aghanims, you kind of have to... It's very hit or miss, right? Because you can't just be throwing out all your spells, so you have to have things pre-slotted and done properly. And like if you accidentally skill the wrong ability, which I don't think happened to me this game, but if you accidentally like miss a meteor or you miss a tornado or you skill the wrong thing, then like your entire fight is lost. So that was pretty chancy. There were a couple times where I meteored and like I did it a little too early or what have you, but I think it went fine, honestly. Invoker wise, like I said, I was a bit rusty, but by the 20-minute mark, I was feeling good. Also, I played an Invoker game earlier today, like we talked about earlier, so that helped a lot. My Quas Wex Invoker is actually terrible right now. I played it the other day.
I mean, Quas Wex is pretty terrible right now, so that makes sense.
Well, it depends. It's definitely worse than Exort, but it still has its situation. And there was a long time where Quas Wex was the only way to play him. But
a very long time ago.
Not even that long ago, honestly. Before Invoker, before Invoker got the level 1 level 1 Invoke buff.
Which was a long time ago.
Well, I mean, relatively.
Like a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, last TI, it wasn't like that, was it?
Quas, it was. The Quas Wex was before TI4.
Right. Oh, boy. All right. I'm, like, mixing things up.
That was, like, when Hani was the best Invoker. Not the best, but one of the best.
I feel like it extended a little farther, but regardless, Quas Wex still has a place. Quas Wex still has a place. It's just not. It's not this game. That's for sure. Yeah, it's not terrible. Honestly, it's just worse.
It's not very good. But yeah, there are times when you should go up. But overall, like when we were playing with Vafa, anytime it's like, I think I'm gonna go Quas Wex. It's like if you went Quas Wex and Quas Exort evenly, and Quas Wex wasn't this like cute, weird, strange bird that you're like, oh, I want to try that out. Like you would not go Quas Wex here. Like it's only people only go it because like, oh, I haven't done this in a while at this point.
Well, okay,
at least it's very much shifted towards that. It's like it's really way worse than Exort, but because it's so rare, people like look for opportunities to do it.
So I want to give some credence to playing Quas Wex sometimes. Quas Wex has value, right? Having, the purge in the early to mid game. If you're running like one of these comps, like yes, people commonly pick Invoker as a counter to Omni Knight for this reason. And if you play the Exort version, you have that in the late game because you have to wait for those Wex levels to come and your Ags to come and all that. But if you play Quas Wex, you can, and you're playing like a push comp, you can do this in the like mid game, or even not a push comp, but even just like a mid game fighting comp. You can do that.
I don't know. I disagree. I mean,
Okay. Well,
you're
that's
gonna,
less of a point than the main point, but
you're gonna have a point in Wex like by the time Omni's ulti is relatively useful. Like Omni doesn't even skill ulti at 6.
no, yeah, okay, but like level 1 tornado flies like 200 units or like 300 units. It is actual like garbage. Like it does basically nothing. Like even 2 points pre-ags, like 3 points is where it's useful, and that means 2 points with ags because generally your timing hits where you're having 2 points Wex when your ags is hitting. In many cases, some cases you might be a little off, but
Okay.
Anyway,
that's when I've drafted Wex Invoker. It's because of an Omni Knight, but even then I'm saying like even in this situation, it's not that much better than Exort.
Oh, okay. So, but the other big thing with Wex Invoker that makes it valuable is EMP in certain comps is incredibly strong against like mana reliant heroes. And then the other big thing is that he comes online a lot faster and he can actually contribute to things. And if he gets ganked, he deals with it a lot easier. So if you're going to have a really heavily pressured lane, like if they pick a Spirit Breaker is one of the best ways to deal with Exort Invokers because either he has to blow Cold Snap on you and then you just leave and you lost nothing, or you continue to fight and then he doesn't have Cold Snap accessible and he's low level, so he can't queue up anything interesting or strong. So then you could just dominate him. But Quas Wex, if you're getting ganked by a Spirit Breaker, an Earth Spirit, or even a Kunkka, you can tornado the oncoming Spirit Breaker, and then when he comes down, he gets hit by EMP, and you cold snap him, and you get an urn, so you have that for the team, but you also have that offensively, and he gets an Orchid at if you go with the Midas build, he gets an Orchid still around like 20 minutes, but it has a lot of like early game like havoc wreaking effects, and he can TP to fights and actually do things compared to an Exort Invoker that only helps through Sunstrikes, which to be fair is an incredibly helpful ability, but it's inconsistent and you can't TP to help things. So there is merit to Quas Wex Invoker. It is just worse than Exort Invoker, like
way worse.
9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's tangent.
I'll say like 10 times out of 11.
Okay, fine. I'll cede to that. But I've seen it do very well. I'll say that.
So have I. It's just I'm just saying. There's a lot of times when people are like, "Wex is good here." It's actually just as good as Exort. It's just the fact that Wex is acceptable and people want to do different things.
Also, the other big thing with Invoker is that for instance, when Exort became like the build, people were really bad at it, and people said it was bad because like it's such a different play styles and you have to like adjust so much. And so people that are going back like myself and playing Quas Wex in a game where it's good are going to be naturally rusty playing Quas Wex and like, knowing all the little timings and knowing your damage, how much damage you're going to do because like you don't have Exort to rely upon. So that's going to naturally make it even worse and appear worse. Anyway,
fair.
Yeah. We've gone a little long because it was a Drow episode.
Skills. Okay, so I got E first, my ore, got the ore first. But then no part of my laning experience was defined by whether or not I had an additional 2 damage.
Yeah,
and no points of the other person we affected by that is you, and I don't care about you. And the dazzle didn't affect that either. It's just whether or not he walked to the secret shop alone behind the creep wave and got killed for no reason.
Yeah.
So I stopped my ore at 1. I skilled frost arrows at 2 because I wanted to be able to like harass so they wouldn't just go on me every 2 seconds. And then at 3 was when Ricky was starting to try to come over, so I decided to get another point in frost arrows, which I think may have been a mistake. But frost arrows level 1 is mostly just for the orb effect, so that you can press Q and click someone and not get creep aggro. Level 2 is when it becomes actually like a kill ability. 22% slow. People will fucking die. So combined with Ricky's Orb of Venom plus my slow, it was actually pretty strong. But on the other hand, if I had gotten my my gust earlier, maybe I could have saved myself a couple times by gusting people away. But then still, you're running away, then you need to turn around, and it was often by one hit that I died. So maybe that would have been the difference. But I'm not too sure. So it might have been better to go 1-1-1. Might have been fine to go 2-0-1. But either way, at 4, I ended up 2 in Frost Arrows, 1 in Gust, and 1 in my Aura. And then after that, I maxed the Aura in my ulti when I could. I was just jungling for the most part after my lane had gone so far to shit. So I was just I put points in my Aura after that, got 3 points in my arrows, and then. If 3 points in arrows isn't going to slow someone down for the most part, I would a gust is what's going to make the difference. So I got the gust after, and then my last point arrow, and it was a fun time.
Well, yeah. Yep. Also, that's gust true. Against what's his name? Gust against Tusk means because the typical thing is Tusk, you're killing him, and then he's going to either prolong a fight or get away with a snowball on somebody. So you just gust him to ensure the kill. I always have trouble with that on Drow, is deciding do I get the second point in arrows? Do I do
I almost always get the second arrows. It's in my most common build is 2-1-2 at 5. I think that's the best thing to do, honestly. Because additional points in your aura before your 6 don't really matter. It's literally 2 damage if I get a second point in my aura. And yeah, it affects multiple heroes, but you got to think who's actually making use of it. It's really just you're probably last hitting, and 2 damage isn't making a difference on that. It's mostly just your mid hero. And once you get to that point, the time where once you're level 4 or whatever, the difference between the mid hero getting a last hit and not isn't really going to be the 2 damage anymore. Spells have come into the equation now. They're getting close to level 6. There's runes. There's jungling. There's pushing out the wave really fast. It stops being as useful. So I feel the 2 points in arrow at 4 is way better than second point in aura.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I'm pretty done with my.
I want to play Dota.
Yeah, I'm down. I mean, I'm not going to play more Dota tonight, but I hope your Dota games are good.
Thank you.
All right.
We're in this together, Sam. I know I hate you, but we're both trying to get 5K, and I respect you as a peer.
I respect you as well. For me, it's mostly just Roland is so fixated on it that I just want to get it.
It's just your personality, you're just such an egotistical asshole. The last thing that we need is as the only 5K in the room.
Yeah. Oh, trust me. I on one on a lot of levels it's just because I think it's funny and that kind of
yeah, I get that.
But on a level, I mean, I am an egotist. I do.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but also
I'm also, if nothing else, I'm very self-aware.
No, that's
particularly
that's
about how
that's
better
good.
I am.
I'm
than
much
most
better.
people.
Yes, of course.
Anyway,
I'm humble to offset it, so our show works.
Yeah, that's definitely it. All right, so on that note, let's hop into our plugs. First of all, our Patreon just got revamped. We've got all kinds of new rewards, replay reviews from any host which you would like to request from, even possibly combinations of hosts. You can improvise. We will allow that. So go for it. We would love nothing more than to review. We've also got commissioned episodes, which could be a lot of fun. That, again, is, you pick your hosts and you say, I want you to talk about Invoker and why Quaswex is a thing or not a thing for an hour. And it could just be Roland and Cyphus, who both don't play Invoker. Do with it what you will. And
wow, thanks for the terrible example of how to use this system.
Yeah, more importantly, it's about supporting us. And we're going to, obviously, our content's always free, and it always will be free, but it's all a good time. Also, if you sponsor even at a low level, we are going to have a sponsor feed for things like commissioned podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all kinds of bonuses. And, of course, supporting us is, we appreciate it.
Yo, can I commission a concert that's you and Flub singing?
No. That's not a podcast. That's a concert. That's
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, podcasts may involve dancing or long bouts of silence or many other things, but they do not involve singing, and that's what the Monday show's for. Roland will sing for free.
Okay.
I, however, will not. So
you do other things
for payment
for free, though.
I do many things for free, but not singing. I will dance for free. I will not sing. Singing is my one thing. I'm not into it. I'm actually the worst. So, on that note, let's hop into other plugs, shall we?
I'm going to hear you sing now.
I used to be good, but then I hit puberty. I used to be a good tenor.
Oh my God,
I was in chorus for 5 years. And then puberty kicked in and I was boy, I went from being a decent tenor to a borderline tone deaf person.
Okay.
And that's why I don't sing. So on that note,
it's cool though, because I don't know, I've been hanging out with you for a pretty long time, but I didn't know that you also went through puberty. So
Yeah, it does. It's not very apparent, but it did happen.
No, I mean, it's just the two of us. Like, we both play Dota. We're both very scrawny people. We've both gone through puberty. Like, the similarities keep adding up.
Yeah, we both love music that everybody else hates. It's terrifying.
No, everyone loves Street Sex.
Yep, I bet. All right, so let's hop into some other plugs, because before we do the typical thing, we say, all right, let's wrap the show up, and then the last 20 minutes. So we have twitch.tv/.ptv. That's where everything happens. I stream there. Proud streams there. Roland streams there. Flub is going to be streaming there in the coming future. We also stream the in-houses Wednesday nights, hosted by Gruton. He is our admin, leader, fearless person for the Wednesday in-houses. It's a good time. Come one, come all, etc., etc. Those are 9 Eastern, if I didn't mention that. We have a YouTube channel, .ptv1. That's where we put our VODs for this show. That's where we upload all the episodes if you prefer to listen to it through YouTube. Fafnir is continuing his replay review series, which is good fun. That's gotten a lot of good responses, very educational. He is also a Kuna Marana team member, like me, myself, and Proud. So we can vouch for him.
We can remember that he's on the team.
Yeah, well, we mention him most of the time. He used to be our stand-in.
Most of the time.
On our website, defenseofthepatients.com, you can find our Amazon banner. That's another way to support us. It costs nothing to you, but it gives us a little cut. We appreciate it a lot. On Twitter, I am at Ursinity. Proud is at Proud Dota. Our show is at @Doppy_show. You can email us with anything you want, reviews, suggestions, etc. Business inquiries if you are like an actual adult person. defenseofthepatients@gmail.com is that. Our Reddit is r/defenseofthepatients. And if you would like to support us, A, tell a friend, and B, iTunes reviews help us a lot. You would not think so. I definitely didn't think iTunes reviews helped when I used to just be a listener of many podcasts, but it actually does raise our notoriety and all that. So we appreciate those all the much more. All the much more. So we appreciate everything, and I think that's all the plugs. And if it's not, whatever. I missed something. Who cares?
I don't appreciate everything.
Okay, well, I appreciate everything. So between the two of us, at least somebody appreciates everything. So
yeah.
On that note, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and just remember that this has been our theory. But, I mean, if you lose, well, it's probably your pub's fault.